Ah, here he is.
Hey guys, I'm Jason, Mike's Uber driver, also Uber connoisseur slash Uber specialist, and I'm here to tell you about one of the most innovative companies in the country in the last 10 years. Let's get started. Hey there again. Let me tell you a little about the industry environment here over at Uber. So Uber is one of the most innovative companies, as I've said before, in the past 20 years. You know, they've created a service that grants people the ability to get where they need to be virtually at the touch of a button. Now, this app took the world by storm, replacing the traditional taxi cab, which was more expensive, required a tip for the driver, and was nearly nowhere impossible to be found. Taxi companies' revenues have dipped, and in Seattle, about 28% since Uber has come out onto the market, and this has made them the strongest, most formidable company in the taxi cab industry to date. Now, you know, there's a lot of companies that are competing with Uber, such as Lyft, doing about the same thing, but due to capital, business popularity, and a good marketing strategy, those companies are actually unable to beat Uber as the top dog. Now, Uber has some amazing benefits for their customers, which is why it's so popular in the industry. So they offer the most reasonable prices. You know, you take a taxi cab in New York City, it's going to be so expensive. When in Uber, you take from point A to point B, it could be $8. So this is great for people who are unable to afford a taxi cab on a regular basis. So another reason why Uber is so beneficial to its customers is because it's way more refutable than the original taxi cab. Now, you get in a taxi cab, you know, someone might have vomited in the seat before you, something like that. So Uber offers way cleaner rides and more high quality rides to customers. So this gives the taxi cab industry a better image just as full, and then helps them gain more consumers as a whole. So again, it's a benefit to the taxi cab industry because it's a service where they basically get rid of monopolization of the traditional taxi cabs. Before, you know, the yellow cab in New York City, that was the only place you could that was the only place you get a taxi from, and now there's several different options, including Uber. Let's take you to the next part.
Alright, so the buyer power of Uber. Uber's clients are sensitive to price variations due to the existence of alternatives and rivals. As the market grows bigger, the number of opponents bringing customers more choice also becomes larger, which makes the switching cost for customers comparatively low. This is because Uber's application software is not only free, but also requires a client's registration, so customers can freely choose between Uber, Lyft, Curb, or any other emerging ride-sharing entities. In addition to ride-sharing apps, clients may also choose to travel via taxi service. Taxi fares are slightly lower when traveling shorter distances as compared to Uber. Also, taxi services do not have increased pricing at peak times, which Uber does have. This is yet another factor as to why the buyer has power in this market. The number of people owning private cars has experienced a huge rise during the past few years, and though parking problems have been more severe, this has not stopped individuals from desiring the status attached to owning a car. This is an alternative means that the demand for Uber services is low. So due to these different things, customers have a lot of power when deciding on ride-sharing service. In addition, the buyer's bargaining power has limited the amount of income for the firm, which makes it an active force to be aware of. Uber needs to be conscious of the fact that there are many options that buyers have in this competitive market, and they need to adjust their strategies to keep customers.
Hey Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you? So every business who makes a product or service always has to consider the threat of another business. Threat of substitutions refers to the likelihood of the customers finding a different way of doing what you're doing, especially in the cheaper way. In the transportation industry, there are many alternatives to get you from where you are to where you want to be. For example, we got SEPTA, we got trains, we got Lyft, we got taxis and self-driving cars. It's why being in the transportation industry, Uber should theoretically fear threat of substitutions every day because there are many other companies and competitors providing transportation to their customers. The quality that stands out from all other competitors is the customer service time to arrival. Uber's main threat is a taxi service and Lyft, and this is because they are more traditional in-town transportation that allows people to get from point A to point B. Some of the things that are their weaknesses to Uber's service is that customers use substitutes for their service. Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, how you guys doing? So when we talk about threats of new entry, that's where a company stands in comparison to its competitors, which is largely dependent on how easy it is to enter the market. For a company such as Uber, the amount of initial capital to enter the market is relatively high. The Uber is not invulnerable to these rising rates, and it makes it easier for other organizations to then penetrate the industry. A number of different problems have also arose for Uber, one of those being foreign governments have fined the company, and negative press also associated with the company has also negatively affected them. Being the technology-based company that Uber is, they're subject to many forms of imitation from other transportation firms. This could potentially be a threat for Uber if other rising companies can operate the same way, but then at a lower cost. The policy Uber is currently offering is an application software which is free to willing customers. The service can be switched at zero cost. Uber's survival in the industry is also dependent on what new companies are able to do when they enter or do not enter the market.
Thanks for the ride, man.
Ain't no problem.
Wow, that was a great ride. One of the strengths of Uber that they have. Now, let's talk about strengths. Do a little SWOT analysis on Uber. So, one of their strengths, as I just said, is that they're a very well-renowned brand. You know, if you need a ride, if you're going to use this app to get into the industry, you're going to use Uber. You heard about it from a friend, your mom, your dad, your cousin. You know, you never know. So another strength that Uber has is that consumers can choose from many different types of car options. Hey, Mike, how you doing back there? So consumers can choose many different types of car options. Now, this could be an SUV for rides of over 4 people. This could be a black car, VIP, for maybe a more fancier ride, you know, make the customer feel like they're more important. So another thing that they have to their strengths is that they're available 24/7. Uber drivers are always on the clock because they're not actually employed by Uber. They take their own cars and they can drive whenever they want. So, you know, unlike Lyft, other companies, they only drive till 3 a.m. Let's say you're stuck in the middle of nowhere at 4 a.m. You know, you could call Uber and get yourself out of there. One more strength that these guys possess is that they keep operational costs very low for themselves, so they're all profit. They don't need to worry about any expenses that happen to their vehicles because guess what? They don't own their vehicles. Their drivers do, so they don't have to worry about that. One more thing I'm going to say about Uber that's a strength is that the customer is in control of their ride. On the app, they could see how far away their ride is, their ETA for the ride, and a picture of their driver, so they can feel completely in control and safe the whole time.
So Uber and Lyft both face very similar weaknesses when looking at their business models. The business is very similar, and it can be expected that they would be running into the same problems. One of the largest complaints made referring to the companies is an increased fare during busy periods. This deters people from using the company services during these times. Another weakness is that they both share issues that complaints about their drivers. This is a larger problem for Uber than Lyft, but it is still an issue they share. They both receive a large amount of sexual harassment complaints from customers. I believe this comes from the relaxed feel of their business. In a yellow cab, you are separated by a piece of glass. One problem that Lyft faces that I did not see to be an issue with Uber is the number of drivers. Lyft has a much smaller workforce of drivers, which results in longer wait times and higher fares when they face demand. Lyft has 315,000 drivers in the U.S., while Uber employs more than 400,000 and operates in 68 countries outside of the U.S. While number of drivers may be not an issue for Uber, driver loyalty is. There are no offices for Uber. There is no face-to-face with executives with Uber, which gives drivers a sense of little loyalty to them. This results in driver switchers to smaller, similar companies. Another weakness that Uber faces is that the model is easily copied. Just like Lyft, that anyone can do it. People always need to go somewhere and are always looking for better and cheaper ways of getting to their destinations. Uber doesn't have a blemish-free record either.
So, Uber has many opportunities in this still fairly new ride-sharing market. Today, customers are often dissatisfied with traditional cab companies because of high prices and long waiting times. They want a service that is more convenient and economical for them. So Uber has wonderful opportunities waiting for them by tapping into a growing market in suburban areas where taxi services are not available.
Recently, there has been a rise in the number of Uber drivers on the roads, which will reduce the estimated time of arrival for the customer. This will make Uber more liked and ultimately obtain more revenue for both the company and the drivers. Additional services such as transporting older patients to the hospital, transporting children to school, and transporting pets to the vet can be offered. These are everyday opportunities that Uber can take advantage of. In addition to driver's cars, cheaper electric cars such as Tesla can be used. Doing this will reduce the costs and increase the driver's profit margin. So Uber can also increase the valuation of its company. This might attract more potential investors. And as a result of this, Uber will have more money to operate and will be able to upgrade the company in many ways.
So when we talk about threats, there's certainly some that affect Uber. Uber can credit much of their success to the innovation the company was built on. However, every company is susceptible to threats. With that being said, adjusting to these threats is equally as important. Many people could qualify to become an Uber driver. This would grow the company and generate more revenues for the company. The more people that become Uber employees, the greater risk of hurting the public brand or the image of the company. This is currently a large major threat to Uber that they're being faced with. Naturally, it becomes hard for Uber to maintain a high employee standard the more number of employees that they get. Innovation in the auto industry is also a major threat to Uber. Self-driving cars would be extremely detrimental for the company. Currently, Uber does not have Uber does have a couple major competitors who operate in the same market. The taxi industry, for example, is an industry that would fight against Uber in any type of legal cases or fight to hurt their innovation power. Lyft is another company that directly competes in the same market as Uber. The increased competition from Lyft has forced Uber to decrease their prices. Drivers for Uber also face earning less wages when the volume is high in a given area. All of these factors are threats to Uber and are threats to the continued success of the company. When the company started operating within the transportation sector before Uber, people would get around with more traditional ways of transportation. If Uber wants to continue their success, like all successful companies, they're going to have to be able to grow and adapt and maintain. I don't know.
My bad. You guys caught me in the middle of a ride. But let's take a look at their business level strategy. So these are as follows. 1 is human capital, 2 is technology, and 3 is pricing. By human capital, I mean that they have over 150,000 drivers driving for them all around the country. Technology, the best. App, you touch it, you can pay by card, you can pay by cash, it's there in a second, and you know exactly who's coming for you. 3rd is pricing. And I'm talking about surge pricing, not just any pricing. Now what this does for Uber is they can tell which areas are most populated with people in need of Uber. So what this does for them is segment the market, which actually gives Uber a crazy algorithm they use to get more riders to them, in turn increasing profit.
Corporate level strategy for Uber. Companies as large and as successful as Uber are very aware of the importance of a good corporate level strategy. Uber has found success using a product development strategy. Uber wants to make the experience and as quality and as smooth as possible for their customers. One way Uber is attempting to enhance this process and experience for the customer is improving their application platform. By doing this, drivers will acquire more business and more customers will have more options when looking for an Uber ride. Uber can further justify its low level of diversification through its vertical integration capabilities. Since the creation of Uber, the company has had a fully autonomy over its service and over its application. Uber does very little outsourcing. In fact, payment methods and marketing are the only outsourcing that the company does. All the company operations relating to the functionality of Uber are vertically integrated. It is important that Uber keeps a clear vision of the big picture as the company grows and progresses in the future. Different aspects go into making an effective corporate level strategy. Some of these important aspects include a growth strategy, a diversification strategy, and a stability strategy. Uber reached this level of success in part of their innovation, and if they wish to continue the success in the future, they will surely be innovative.
So, one of the key factors in Uber's business strategy is that there are several benefits that Uber provides for its customers. One of these benefits is that Uber is a huge problem solver for those in need of rides. This is because there are many people who need the service of a taxi, but Uber gives them an easy-to-use app that is very user-friendly. Uber has been able to demonopolize the taxi cab industry because it has innovated in different ways. Uber provides clean, high-quality rides for customers and accepts different forms of payment. Uber also has allowed the customer to have more control over the ride, being able to track how far away their driver is, as well as how long their ride will be and the cost. Competitors are not able to keep up with Uber, such as traditional taxi cabs. They are usually known to be extremely dirty, and the driver is unknown to the rider previous to the ride. So with Uber, you'll be able to know who's taking you places, and you'll be able to feel safe.
Uber does not only give benefits to their customers, but also several benefits for their drivers as well. This is a very important key factor for Uber's success. Uber has been able to give several people who are in need of jobs an opportunity for employment. In major cities, it is extremely difficult for people to find employment as limo or taxi drivers. In turn, these people looking for work sign up for Uber and are able to become drivers. Working as an Uber driver can sometimes grant people up to $500 in a workday. A taxi cab driver usually makes this on a week's average. The benefits that drivers are given motivate these drivers to give the highest quality of rides to their customers, keeping their customers loyal and happy. This is the reason that the traditional taxi cab company cannot keep up with Uber. They must give their employees a set salary due to other expenses they must pay for the company. Uber drivers get money based off of the rides they give, and they can work all hours of the day, whichever they want.
Uber, like many great innovations, was very disruptive when it first hit the market. Traditionally, the sector of the transportation industry was dominated by the taxi cab drivers. When Uber was established, it immediately became much easier for consumers to obtain rides from one place to another. Uber essentially demonopolized the taxi cab service and reinvented how consumers travel. Many different factors have played a role and contributed to Uber's success. One of these factors includes price surging, which is essentially the demand for rides increases, then the price will increase as well. Although price surging doesn't exactly thrill the consumer, it still benefits the company greatly. For example, if a big storm blows in, many people will not want to risk driving and will much rather call Uber for a ride. Trying to hail a taxi cab in extreme conditions may also be tough. Consumers of Uber are paying for the convenience and luxury that they are getting. Uber also releases as a warning as fare prices begin to increase as a result of demand. All things considered, Uber's pricing is still very competitive and fair considering the convenience and luxury consumers are getting just from the push of a button. As previously stated, Uber has changed the face of the transportation industry. Many people in cities feel less obligated to purchase a car knowing they can rely on purchasing Uber rides. Uber is expanding into parts of the U.S. and even the world where previously such luxurious transportation services were non-existent. The business has exponential growth potential, and as a result, investors are racing to get a piece of the action. Uber is also expanding into food delivery markets, which should help to grow and expand the company even further. Uber was very disruptive to its competitors and continues to be as the company grows. However, if Uber wants to stay on this path, they will need to continue to grow and adapt to continue this great success. Two of the key factors behind Uber's success are early adopters and word of mouth. Early adopters are the first people who use the app. These people were very tech savvy and always on the lookout for new improving technologies and companies to make everyday life easier. Uber was one of these companies. These people were not satisfied with the traditional taxi cab service and were in need of improvement. San Francisco was the perfect place to launch Uber, the mixture of a tech-savvy culture and a need for better transportation. The people of San Francisco were quick to adopt Uber as their new primary source of transportation. because they could access it from their phone and didn't have to stand in the street calling for a cab. This was just the answer for the people of San Francisco. Uber also began to market to these individuals. They would hold tech events to raise awareness of their service, and they would also give free rides to people for attending these events. After one ride, it was evident that Uber was much more enjoyable and much easier than classic taxicab. Another factor that promoted success is word of mouth. In this tech-savvy community, word of mouth was huge. These people would use Uber for the first time and realize how great it was. They would go on to tell their friends would tell their friends, and so on and so forth. This was not intentional, but it turned out huge in Uber's favor. This community talked to each other or posted about everything they did. It was only a matter of time before the Uber wildfire caught on and became the primary transportation service of all of San Francisco. One of the biggest sources that spread this fire was social media. In a city like this, everyone posts about everything. All it took was a few people tweeting about Uber or posting on Facebook about it for it to take off. The early adopters of Uber and the spreading due to word of mouth are two of the reasons that Uber has become as successful as it is.
Now, I think Uber's a great company, but I do have some recommendations for them. Now, let me tell you one of them. So they need to reduce driver downtime. And what I mean by this is you want to be able to keep the driver in the car, not the driver, the customer in the car for as short as a time as possible, and you want them to be waiting for the ride for as short as time as possible too. So what they should do is have drivers be able to speed up the pickup process. Now, why not have a driver opt into a shift while they're working? The app just tells them immediately what their next pickup is. So they're immediately done with the ride and they know exactly what time their next pickup is. In this case, passengers aren't left waiting for as long as if they would with another app.
In addition, Uber creates wonderful loyalty programs for its users to have. Sorry about that. So, Uber gives relatively large discounts for bringing new people on board, about $10 to $20. But in a city like San Francisco, where there are multiple options, it seems strange not to offer something to make switching costs higher. A frequent rider program that either saves you money or pushes you to take an extra ride or two a month to get a status would be a huge benefit in increasing customer loyalty. You could compare this to like an airline loyalty rewards program. The reward doesn't even necessarily need to be monetary, but it seems like there could be interesting things to play with in doing more to frequent riders to use Uber. It's possible that most people just use one app, and the rider loyalty program would just serve to cut into profits versus engaging riders who switch between the multiple services.
Hey, so a third idea for Uber is they could customize the experience. Uber recently did a Spotify partnership, which requires a paid Spotify account and is limited for most. Other than that, there's not much that customers can do as far as the ride. People, riders, and drivers alike view rides as a great way to connect with someone else, while others who enjoy the peace and quiet for their ride would rather take the time for themselves. For a while, the difference was marked by a distinction between Uber and Lyft that seems to be less so now. But even so, allowing a rider to give some indication of their personal preference, type of music for example, could really go a long way for Uber.
Considering how far Uber has come from when it first started out as a small service, we can learn many things from the processes they used to create such a large and impactful service. They learned from taxis that customers tend to wait a long time for a ride, and they came up with a solution to transport customers to their destinations quicker and less expensively, obviously making them have a competitive advantage in the transportation market. Not only is it quicker and cheaper, but it is easier to use through the app rather than finding a phone number if you are in an unfamiliar place. They also opened up many jobs for people who are trying to support not only themselves, but their families as well. This is a huge part of their success because it is pretty easy to qualify to be an Uber driver, which resulted in a huge increase in drivers. Now since there are more drivers on the road, the customers wait even a shorter period of time for the driver to pick them up. Price surging as a consumer is not always the best idea for a company to do, but it proves that they have monopolized the market. Consumers will pay a little bit more for a quicker arrival time, if, for example, as mentioned earlier, there was a storm and they don't want to risk getting in an accident. When Uber first started, word of mouth was the biggest marketing for them. People would spread how useful and how much better the quality was over taxis. This was huge for their growth, and due to the increase in demand, they now offer loyalty programs for customers because of the word of mouth marketing.
Hey!